All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now preview the late window games for Sunday. So we'll try to go through the less important games, and then get into the more important games. So yeah, a lot of these games, actually, they're resting starters, like the Niners and the Rams game. Like pretty much the Rams are resting pretty much all of their starters. The Niners seems like, other than McCaffrey and Brock Purdy, everybody else is going to play. It seems like Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle are going to play. I don't know about on defense, but I do have the Rams right now to cover, but I don't know. I could change that. The Rams, they're pretty much locked into their playoff spot. The Niners got the 1 seed. But obviously, that's why it's just tough. Because on one hand, it's if you rest, it's good to rest the starters, but it's also bad because then they could be rusty when you come back because of the layoff. But if you play them and they get hurt, then it's well, why'd you play them? It's just, that's going to be a never-ending debate. But yeah, we're actually going to see Carson Wentz against Sam Darnold, it looks like. So that'll be an interesting matchup. But yeah, I got the Rams right now with the points, but I might change that. I got to think about it. The Chiefs are playing the Chargers right now. I mean, that line went from 1.5 to now 3.5. The Chargers are favored over the Chiefs. We're going to see Blaine Gabbert against Easton Stick. Yeah, I don't know what to do in that game. I honestly don't. I think right now I have the Chiefs still, but I might switch it. Let's just go into the important games. So, you got the Bears and the Packers. You got, Seattle and the Cardinals. Obviously, these have huge implications when it comes to the wild card. Now, with the Packers, and I've been saying this, and it's come up on social media, so last year, they play against the Vikings. They destroy the Vikings, and then they play a divisional opponent that really has nothing to play for. And then in the Lions, and the Lions end up knocking them out of the playoffs. The Packers had to win and they're in last year, that Sunday night game, and they ended up losing. Aaron Rodgers' final game, final game with the Packers. Now you got a similar situation here. Packers just come off of a big win over the Vikings. Now they're playing the Bears, who are eliminated from the playoffs. Got really nothing to play for. Actually, they are eliminated, right? Or I think, yeah, they're eliminated pretty much. And Packers just got to win and they're in. But the Bears have been playing better as of late. Ever since Justin Fields has come back, I mean, they did. If they could have beaten the Lions and the Browns, I mean, you're looking at this team. This team right now is pretty much going to be a lock to get in, because they'd be 9-7, and we're almost a lock to get in. But those were two heartbreaking losses. I mean, they were up by multiple scores against both of them, and they just you let the Lions score twice inside of 5 minutes in that first game, and then against the Browns you were up by 10, and then Joe Flacco led the comeback. You had the Bears had their opportunities in that game. They could have caught the Hail Mary. I mean, Mooney should have caught the Hail Mary, and then you also had something I didn't talk about when I recapped that game was Robert Tonyan. Justin Fields threw him a great pass, and Tonyan dropped it, and that would have been a touchdown. So Bears could have had a better record, but yeah, they're sitting at 7-9. I like the Bears to cover in the game because the Packers are 3-point favorites. I like the Bears to cover, but I'm still going to take the Packers to win. Jordan Love has been on a tear recently. I mean, he's put together a good season overall. Almost 4,000 yards passing, 30 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. I mean, that's not bad for your first full year as a starter. And the Packers, even if they do lose, I mean, they got a young team, and they could definitely build off of this. But we'll see. We'll see if they can get it done this time. But the Bears' defense has been good as of late. So I'm a little worried about it. And I'm also worried. Look, the Packers defense did play well against the Vikings, but you also had Jaron Hall starting, and by the time they put Nick Mullins in, the game was already out of reach. So I think if Nick Mullins played the full game, it would have been a lot different. But I'm going to take the Packers to win and cover. So that would basically knock Seattle out of the playoffs. Right now, the Cardinals are 3-point underdogs at home against them. I mean, I take the Cardinals with the points. I think Seattle should still win. But, the Cardinals, listen, they could put up points. I mean, we saw it last week against the Eagles. And, I mean, this is a divisional game. And, maybe the Cardinals, they want to go out on a high note and try to, upset the Seahawks and basically knock them out of the playoffs, even though if Green Bay wins, they'll pretty much do that. But I'm gonna take the Cardinals to cover. I think the Seahawks still win though. And then some of the other games here. I mean, you got the Raiders and the Broncos. Raiders right now are 2.5-point favorites. Jarrett Stidham is making his return to Vegas. Obviously he was with them last year. You got the two teams playing against each other that have benched their quarterbacks and, replaced them with Jarrett Stidham the last 2 years. I mean, last year they did it with Derek Carr. Stidham started. And now this year they did it with Russell Wilson. Broncos came off of that win last week against the Chargers. Raiders coming off of that close loss to the Colts. I like the Raiders to win here. I think they've played well at home, and I feel like they're going to end off this season with a win. And then we'll see what they do with their coach next year with Antonio Pierce. Is he going to be the guy, or are they going to bring in somebody else? So I'll take the Raiders here to win and to cover the 2.5-point spread. So then you got the NFC East matchups. Right, I went through everybody else pretty much. Yeah. So you got the Giants and the Eagles, and then you got the Commanders and the Cowboys. So I guess Sam Howell is going to start this week against the Cowboys, because I know they were going to start Jacoby Brissett, but then that ended up not happening. Actually, let's take a look and see if that, because Jacoby Brissett was supposed to start against the Niners, and that ended up not happening due to injury. So it could be Sam Howell again. Yeah, so this is from a couple days ago. So Ron Rivera told reporters that quarterback Sam Howell will start in Week 18 against the Cowboys. He's got a league high 19 interceptions. I mean, again, I thought that maybe the Commanders had something in Howell, but now it's, it hasn't looked good recently. Cowboys are 13.5-point favorites, and if you remember last year, they played each other in Week 18 in Washington, and the Commanders won with Sam Howell. That was his first start. I'll be honest, I actually did take the 13.5, just because. But again, it's a different year. But I don't know. It's a big number. I mean, I don't know. With the 49ers, they cover the numbers. I don't know. The Cowboys, I got to think about it more. Because the other thing, too, is the Cowboys, they could end up just resting people. But they do need this game, though, because the Eagles, if they win and the Cowboys somehow lose, then the Eagles would retake the division. So the Cowboys are going to have to play their starters pretty much the whole game, unless they're, up by a lot early on. But, right now I got the 13.5 with the Commanders, so that's my pick. But I think the Cowboys should still win, of course. And then for the Eagles and the Giants. So the Giants are 5.5-point underdogs. Eagles coming in, losing to the Cardinals. I just still can't wrap my head around that. But, yep, that's what happened. The Giants, these teams played each other on Christmas, and the Giants, made it competitive. But, again, they're a team of almost and ifs. And I feel like this is going to be another one of those almost ifs games. The Giants are going to be competitive. Won't be surprised if they'll be winning at one point during this game. But I think ultimately the Eagles will take this game and win it. I think the Giants cover the 5.5, but I'm going to take the Eagles. because the Giants have been competitive. They've been in games. They almost upset the Rams last week. So, you know what? I'm going to say that they keep it close. Also, the Eagles' defense just has been awful recently. So, I think that trend continues. So, I'll take the Giants with the 5.5, but the Eagles win. So, run through the picks. I mean, there was two games I wasn't sure with. But this is what I have for right now. So, the Packers and the Bears, got the Bears covering the 3.5 or the 3. But the Packers win. Giants covering the 5.5, but the Eagles win. Cardinals covering the 3.5 points, but the Seahawks win. Broncos and Rams, the Rams winning and covering the 2.5 point spread. I'm going to say the Chiefs cover the 3.5 in the game. And, I'm going to say they're going to win because the Chargers, they really couldn't get anything going offensively last week. So, you know what? I think the Chiefs backups win, and they even with them as an underdog. And then the Niners-Rams game, I don't know. I might take the Niners and have them cover. And then I have the Commanders covering, but the Cowboys winning. So that's the late window games right there. We'll see what happens. Again, we'll know more as to who is, starting, who is sitting, for this week. But yeah, this is basically it, to win a spread pool until spread pool week until next year. So, this is it. Games. There are some good games here, of course. Packers Bears is one of the better games. Of course, the game we're going to talk about in the next segment. That's the one that we really want to touch upon, and that's the Bills and the Dolphins. But yeah, we've reached the end here in the regular season, and then from here on out, it's going to be playoff talk, and then after that. Then you talk about free agency, the draft, and then it starts up again. It's a cycle. So that's kind of where we're at. But so when we get back from our final break of the show, we're gonna preview the Dolphins and the Bills. That's the last game of the week. Obviously, depending on what happens, the Bills could either be the 6th seed or the 6th seed, the 2 seed, or they could just flat out not make the playoffs, which would be crazy. So their ceiling is the 2 seed, and then their floor is they're out. They're out of the playoffs. But yeah, it's we're going to see some wacky stuff on over the weekend. We definitely will. And I don't expect all my picks to be right. I expect to get another 7 or 8 wins once again to finish off the year, and then then you got to regroup for next year. But the other thing is, it'll be nice, not to have fantasy football to deal with this week. And just again watch the games. Still kind of bitter for my my playoff defeats in all my leagues because each week. Because I had 4 teams that made the playoffs, and each week one got eliminated. And if we were able to take the next step and make it to the next round, to the championship games, we again could have won them, but it was just because of those first games that we couldn't get there. But yeah, when we come back we'll take our last break, and then when we come back, we'll preview the Bills-Dolphins game. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.